to the RationalInvestor.com's Daily Brief. The answer to your question is learn the goddamn process, trade your trading plans, don't take too much risk on any one trade, and just let yourself get rich. Hello, everybody. Happy Labor's Day, Monday morning. 9 o'clock on the West Coast. Actually, I guess a few minutes past the top of the hour. Maybe you guys can leave some comments or in the fields below. I don't know whether you guys noticed that YouTube sort of changed its video settings. Chris and I are wrangling a little bit with what they're doing here. And when I come back from Liam, I like to sit and watch back the video and sort of critique myself on how I did. And I didn't notice any buffering issues of yesterday's video, but I did notice some people were saying that they were having buffering issues. So it ran smoothly for me after the fact last night. So I'm not quite sure what the issue is there. It might just be that Big Brother censors my videos, especially in countries like Australia. And it's so sad, actually, because I always thought Australia was one of the freest countries in the world, but I get the distinct impression their sort of politically correct culture has made them very unfree. And I wouldn't be surprised if they do sort of like that secret sort of censoring. One thing I don't like about what's happening with this world is, certain dickheads who are buying social media outlets, you all know who I'm talking about, say things like, well, you're allowed freedom of speech, but you're not allowed freedom of reach. So, I mean, maybe that's half of the reason why my videos aren't getting the reach is because I am notoriously politically incorrect. Anyway. Enjoy it while it lasts. Hopefully you get some good value out of it. We pointed out, at least I pointed out about 3 or 4, what I thought, watching the video back after the fact, 3 or 4 things that absolute gold. Nobody teaches this stuff online. Nobody talks about it. And yet we gave really good tutorials on it yesterday. Things like trend lines, the COT report. That piece I did on the COT report was just absolutely awesome. And nobody teaches that stuff anywhere. So I'm not quite sure why these videos don't go viral. They really should. A lot of excellent learning material. Just got to somehow try and watch the P's and Q's, I guess. Anyway, Steve-O. Hello, Steve-O. Steve says, good evening, Brian. We saw what Australia and NZW were like through the scam vid. Scam vid, is that what we're calling it now? That's good. Anyway, it is what it is. It is a holiday today here in North America. I think it was actually a fairly sort of business as usual day for Europe and Asia. But North America, you can definitely see. I mean, everything's just basically closed here today. In fact, looking out my window, the streets are almost dead. So everybody's taking the day off here. In fact, I even gave myself permission to sleep in this morning. And one of our lounge members was like, well, what the hell, Brian? Maybe you ought to sleep in every once in a while. Give yourself a break, especially on a holiday. I mean, what the hell? So I don't think we're going to have a hell of a lot to talk about here today. Hopefully, keep this relatively short-winded. Maybe we'll wind this up by the bottom half of the hour here. I was encouraged about the turn in the breadth indicator here on the broader market recently, but then late last week we kind of got bitch slapped there as things like the core inflation numbers that the U.S. Federal Reserve is following. I mean, of course, it's all just made up gobbledygook numbers anyway, but their sort of data set du jour that they're spoon feeding the public as their reason for acting. It's remaining stubbornly high, and I would imagine it will so for quite some time. So the PCE, I think they call it personal consumption expenditure, blah, 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 a bunch of double talk. But anyway, the point there is still up in the 4+% area, and it needs to be down in the 2+% area for them to be happy. So I don't really see interest rates going down anytime soon. Did notice a couple news articles from overseas that would explain why the sort of world's a bit firmer here this morning. Did see things like headlines: China's country garden buys time to repay its debts. So this is one of these sort of kick the can down the road kind of thing. We should probably figure out what that deadline date is. And we'll probably find that that's when the next big sort of crisis du jour pops up. My hunch is probably sometime like sort of maybe latter part of September, maybe end of October kind of idea. We probably find that there's some sort of big catalyst around there. And if I understand correctly, what we should all be paying attention to, there's a big, we're coming into more eclipse seasons. And we've got a solar eclipse happening on the 14th of October. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's like a few of these things that are all sort of sprinkled in and around. You can see here we've got this says October 28th to 29th is a lunar eclipse, partial. So we found, and I found throughout my career, that the market loves to pivot through these eclipses. Now, you might find that other news around the world dominates the conversation, but somewhere in the background, these darn eclipses always seem to sort of point out pivots. So, they don't call it the fall for nothing. September is historically the worst performing month in the stock market, so just be prepared for that. It's pretty business as usual. You really shouldn't expect a heck of a lot from the market through September. And I wouldn't be surprised if those eclipse events are sort of our catalyst, and probably, that China's kicking the can down the road. Probably the next sort of event that we need to watch for probably lies within that eclipse window. Also, too, did notice, and I'm seeing this more and more, I get the distinct impression that China and India are going to go head to head at some point in the not too distant future. It might be like 10, 20 years down the road. They have actually fought wars against each other in the past. I'm also finding too, in a weird sort of way, actually, I think the Chinese are a lot more humble on the world stage. Like they were, it was a great outlandish statement for them to actually talk about, what was it called? Wolf warrior diplomacy or whatever, which on balance isn't, I mean, if you are, a global superpower, you would expect, like, listen to the Russians, you'd think they'd have a fucking 10-inch dick or something, the way they're so goddamn arrogant and pushing people around in the world. The Chinese actually aren't that bad, but I'll tell you, the Indians, oh my goodness, they are borderline insufferable how arrogant and just in your face aggressive they can be. So I wouldn't be surprised if in the not too distant future in India, I get the impression they're sort of feeling a little bit more self-confident these days on the world stage. And you can sort of see that they're kind of like, we're not going to take shit from anybody, fuck you, let's go. And I kind of noticed that China and India lately, it's gotten to the point now where, China, Winnie the Pooh's not even going to go to the G20 meeting because he doesn't even want to see that Indian leader. It doesn't. I get the impression that something went down at that BRICS conference that really didn't go very well. So it's probably something that us in the public would never see. So I did find that kind of interesting. And that would be a nice curveball to all of this because everybody's kind of focused on the West, on the West, on the West. But I could very easily see that China and India go head to head, and 100 million people are wiped out just like that. I could see that happen. And of course, that's something that's the kind of thing that Powell needs to see the world economy break somehow. And I've said repeatedly to you guys, I don't think that the problems this cycle have anything to do with the United States. In fact, I'd say the United States economically is set up very, very well right now. The problems are going to be in all of these fluffy countries that think that they're first world nations, but in reality, they're still third world nations. And when the free money disappears, all of a sudden life gets a little bit challenging. So anyway, take it for whatever it's worth. That's a 50-year-old man with a little bit of life experience. I've seen the Chinese and the Indians go head to head. And I've often talked about that here because this experiment called Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, this actually could, well, an interesting sort of solution to this absolute nightmare scenario here for Canada is a city like Vancouver could actually turn into like a Sarajevo. And if you're familiar with the story of Sarajevo, that was basically, in the early 1980s, they even had an Olympics in Yugoslavia, the Sarajevo Winter Olympics, and they were touting how wonderfully this world was, where they could have Muslims and Christians all living together in harmony. And within 10 years, what the hell happened? I mean, it turned into an absolute killing field. I hate to say it, but Vancouver is exactly the same scenario. It's like literally this part is Chinese, this part is Indian, and if those two go to war over there in Asia, what do you think the odds are that these clowns are going to butt heads here in North America? So, it's interesting how Canada's turned into almost like the poster child for what you don't want to see in this world, whether it be the over-the-top communist, socialist idiocy, Klaus's Great Reset, bankers, scandals. I think there's, and JoJo, she would always say this, that her family, of course, were slightly involved in the Aryan Nation people. I mean, we won't go into all that nonsense, but they were those white power kind of people. But anyway, they always were talking about that one day there's going to be a race war here in Vancouver. So anyway, we'll see what happens. Who knows? I don't think you can label that hate speech. I think you just label that just reality speech. Actually, somebody actually just saying, you got like a couple 100,000 Indians here and a few 100,000 Chinese here, and they don't like each other very much. What's going to happen? Anyway, that's what you get when the market's kind of quiet. You get Brian talking about geopolitics. There you go. Merry Christmas. Other than that, of course, it is a government holiday here in North America. It's also sort of like the Workers' Day. So as I said, you can kind of see it in the air. I mean, nobody really wants to be doing anything today. In fact, I'm even surprised I'm even here myself right now. I don't know whether there's much more sort of newsy going on in the world. Of course, Ukraine, Russia still doing their thing. Interesting how the whole grain deal thing, the debate, that's a big sort of hot potato right now. I think the Russians and the Turks are meeting right now over that. So I don't know whether we're going to have any fallout from that event in grain prices themselves. So other than that, just I'm not really seeing a hell of a lot to get too excited about here today. News-wise, Econs, same sort of thing. Of course, I like to do my demonstrator or best practices kind of idea. So here we are starting back from the Labor Day weekend. It is a holiday. Like I said, I gave myself permission to sleep in a bit here today. But the general sort of tone of what the hell's going on in the world, stocks gain in Asia, and the scuttlebutt was that the Chinese are trying to do whatever they can to try and help their property market. Is a little too little too late. I don't know. is it got to the point where they are now, and I remember through the Asian contagion in the mid 1990s, the Chinese government came in and just bought everything one day and put a bottom in the market, and the whole market launched itself higher. And the little bureaucrat that came on Nightly Business Report that night in particular, she said, well, we wanted to punish the speculators. So just understand that totalitarian dictatorships, they can do these kind of things where they'll just come in and they'll just run a market one direction or another because they want to establish floors and ceilings in markets. And of course, everything this has to do with liquidity. If the Chinese government, I mean, I think they're still enjoying a fairly sizable trade surplus. So there's still like net money flowing into the country. So if they just wanted to funnel, a few $100 billion here or there towards the property market to try and shore that up, and I mean, it wouldn't be outlandish. So you can see lots of talk in Asia about can they firm up the market, and what are some of the steps that the government's taking to try and firm that market out. As I said, North America is closed, so the actual econs themselves today are extremely light. Here's Monday. Actually, it's not too light. When I sort of put it to like, well, actually, news that actually has an impact, right? Okay, well, now everything disappeared. So Spain unemployment. I mean, employment, unemployment. Looks like a whole bunch of Spanish people got some jobs, so way to go. Turkish inflation rate year over year. We think we have problems with inflation. Imagine living in Turkey. Fuck me. 58% annual inflation rate. But prices are going up 9% a month. Now that's inflation, folks. So that's the definition of hyperinflation. It's almost tragic, really, what the effects of inflation can have on economies and societies. But as you can see, we don't really have a hell of a lot. We got some speakers, and then we have to jump all the way to 4 o'clock in the afternoon, my time, or basically 7 hours from now before we actually start getting any data prints coming out of Asia. And I sort of pointed out in the video yesterday that through these holiday weekends, you actually see these a little bit of funny business going on in the market until about the time Asia opens up for the day after the holiday. So it's still technically a holiday for me, and it'll be 4 o'clock in the afternoon, but it will be Tuesday morning in Asia. And you can see there's a whole bunch of stuff coming out here for tomorrow for the Asian countries. So, probably this will pivot the market. And then tomorrow, a couple little data points here, probably pivot price. Not huge numbers, nothing groundbreaking. And certainly not, like the red data points. It looks like we got a couple red data prints coming out of Australia. But obviously their interest rate decision, that's going to drive the Aussie currency. But other than that, I mean, the econs, it's going to be fairly light, sort of coming back. I get the impression it's probably going to be like, I would even imagine through the whole first week. I remember even in 2001, the first week, coming back from the Labor Day weekend, things actually were pretty calm, and it was sort of, just business as usual. And then 9/11 happened and fucking all hell broke loose. So I get the impression that the next week or so, it's going to be sort of just getting our footing. If we actually look at the markets themselves, Mondays we like to start off, and probably in the after party, we'll dig into this a little bit more. But just on first blush, especially with the markets being basically closed today, you can kind of see the US dollar index is parked up here at the top end of its range. It's actually at A, B, C, D price objectives. You can see how we're brushing up against a trend line from the underside here. And really, what I often suggest to people is maybe just let this thing give you a tell as to which direction it wants to go. And then if you are so inclined, drill down to your various different individual currencies and look for trade setups. And I hate to say it, but just really simply put, top end of the range, bottom end of the range, and kind of like that comment I made a minute ago. The next FOMC meeting, I think I have them on the Bitcoin charts. At least I thought I had that. That's where I thought I had it, but maybe not. I know I like to put all the FOMC notes on this chart. Let's see, do I have it on here? Yeah, there it is. So next FOMC meeting is 20th of September. Does that sound right? 2021. So, again, you might find that the market's just choppy into that 2020. Let's even maybe just throw this on here. Where's 20th? Jeez, it's pretty far away. This is like a 4-hour chart, I think. Yeah, all the way over here. 20th. There we go. Something like that. So, I mean, they always say the longer the channel, the bigger the run. So if we just sit in this channel for a while, that would actually make sense. Then if we did get an M price structure, then it means that the world economy is getting ready to launch itself higher. If we got a big fat W, then that would be a nice bull flag on the US dollar, implying that there's still trouble ahead for the world economy. But what I would just simply say is, for the time being, we're basically range bound. Might even put that over there now. Thank you, Chris. You can also see, I mean, we really haven't done anything here today. So if we look at the broader matrix, you can see things are kind of parked, a lot of sideways. I suppose we could take a couple minutes to look at the Bitcoin price chart. Not a heck of a lot of follow through from yesterday's conversation, basically the same thing. And of course, the bond market's closed because of the government holiday. In fact, actually, the US market might even be closed now. I don't know whether the futures markets may have closed earlier, but I think, oh yeah, it looks like, well, they're still ticking away. But we were a bit more active earlier this morning, but you can see they've really just completely slowed down here, and the futures markets might even close early today. I don't know. I think I heard Chris. Chris, didn't you say that these futures markets might even close early here today?
Yeah, they should be holding early this today. Yeah.
All right. So I think basically, to all intents and purposes, the trade is done for today. Which, interestingly enough, probably people's attention will switch over to crypto as it trades 24/7. So, bigger picture. I mean, maybe it's worthwhile, since it is Monday and it is a holiday. We'll just take a look at some of the daily charts. 8s and 9s coming in on the stock market and on Tom DeMark right at trendline resistance. And as you saw there off of the 4-hour chart, I now have a grand total of 8 confirmed bearish divergences on this megaphone. Any kind of M top here. You can see how all the moving averages are all coming in together. The M failure would be a move below that 45.0725, and that would be through all these moving averages. And my hunch is, if that does happen, we'll probably go into correction mode. And you can see how far away ATRs are here. So it could be a bit of volatility come into the market tomorrow. 8s and 9s on Tom DeMark. Usually, at the very least, this usually says pause. Also, too, we had a long conversation in the Broiler Chicken Show yesterday about shooting stars. So you can see there's a pretty darn big wick up there, a whole bunch of trap bulls. If we do roll over here, this also potentially is a diamond. Remember, we saw that megaphone on the lower time frame chart. So remember how the Bitcoin diamond played out. I don't know whether we go that way, but nonetheless, diamonds basically are a trading range. this one shooting star, kind of a little bit dojiest, but more shooting star than doji. It probably defines our trading range. If we go up through these highs, it means we're clearing through this resistance, and we probably want to head up and fill in this gap up top. If we break through these lows, then we probably need to come back down, fill in this gap down below. So we're kind of in no man's land. This is a dangerous place to really call the market. We could very easily head up. We could very easily head down. And ironically enough, the moves are probably going to be like almost equal size. At the same time, too, we have put in this wide double bottom, and that paints Foggenbaum's way up top here. So until we actually put in M structure here, I still have to be thinking up. It just looks to me like this is almost like we just need a pullback into support, into trend line, moving average support, trend line support, that kind of stuff before we set our stages for higher moves. Gold market, I suppose, same kind of similar talk conversation. Notice, Bitcoin's not out on an island. Remember, I had said in the Broiler Chicken show yesterday, I'm seeing a lot of sort of moves, like, I don't know whether you call it correlatory, if that is a word or not, but a lot of the market is moving in unison these days. So notice, we had shooting stars there in Bitcoin, shooting stars in the stock market, shooting stars in gold. And technically speaking, okay, we're into areas. This is the 50% rule. We actually did hit a 4669 on that rally up top, so you shouldn't be surprised that we made that move. I suppose if you are a bear and you're thinking AB equals CD, we did have the move stop to scratch level here, and we just came back to the 25, meaning if you were short this move, you're probably best just to hop off and wait for the next setup at scratch. I don't really have any direction. We're sitting right at the 50% rule of this range. If anything, we're probably going to have to give the market the week to open up and get settled in, and then we'll get direction. I think for the purpose of this, we'll leave the crude and the other stocks alone. We'll just take a quick boo at Bitcoin, and you can see the chart. These are the Bitcoin futures. Interesting how I guess we shouldn't have been surprised that we basically came down, tagged this 200 period moving average off the daily charts, and jackknifed away from there. But we are painting lower highs and lower lows. Well, that's not a good sign. We also did just a moment ago, well, I guess about 3 days ago, carved out an inside bar failure. I would call that a bull bear baremi, or bull bear battle lines. This actually is what I would consider a confirmed harami. Baby's body is entirely within mummy's body, so that's actually a very powerful sell signal. And boosh, 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 down we go. I think you could say that we are sort of in moving average support and resistance. So in the short term of the futures contracts, I think there's now brick wall of resistance at that failure level. And if we look at the actual chart, here is the stamp cash market. There is that inside bar failure. And my hunch is that's probably major resistance now, because any kind of counter trend rally back into that level, if we look at it on a lower time frame chart, you actually see that this is actually a double top breakdown. And we talked a little bit about this yesterday, where this does look like I had sort of mapped out this inverted head and shoulders, thinking that if we did want to work our way back up, if we did accept above the POC here, where are we likely to rally back to? And I really like the idea of a tag of the underside of that harami sell level, which is basically this low here. So rally peak there would be $27,006. But the issue here is that if this is an inverted head and shoulders, we're not really allowed to lose this left shoulder level. So the bulls, they got to step up here. The fact that we're just sort of drifting down here on this holiday session, that doesn't fill me with a lot of confidence. Now, maybe we have an inside bar here, and that inside bar fires. In fact, this is Harami. Notice baby's body is entirely inside mummy's body. Looks like the head or feet might be slightly outside of mummy's body. But I think Japanese candlestick people would be okay with that. So this is a 4-hour chart. If we go beep, finish this bar, and then tick up through this high, that is a lower time frame, a very quick buy signal. And it probably means we're going to try and push our way back up into this neckline. And like I said, if the neckline does fire, then heck, we might get a half decent little rally to start us off the beginning of the week. So the problem here, though, is that this low was taken out. So lower highs and lower lows defines a bear. And if we look at the futures markets, you can really see it pronounced. Lower highs and lower lows defines a bear. And if anything, I'm almost thinking when I look at a chart like this, A to B, clone that, C to D, that should take us down into 23,000 and change. And if I'm not mistaken, I think off of like these charts, that 23,000 number actually makes a lot of sense. The 50% level of this entire rally is 23,500 and change. So candle body lows for trade location, wicks and tails like to be eaten. There is the actual reload zone of where I would like to actually be a buyer of Bitcoins, at the very minimum. I would like to see this dump down into here. And to answer somebody's question specifically, I'll probably talk about this more in the after party. But when I say, well, I'd want to buy, I want to be a buyer here, that's talking about new money. I mean, I have money invested in Bitcoin from like $400. So I'm not touching that shit. And I never will. It's their Liam's Bitcoins. And actually, I watched, I suppose, a great anecdote to finish this off. Because remember, a big warning for everybody is, maybe we dump down into, maybe underneath 20,000, trade back down to cost of production. Right now we're at what, 25, 26, 27, whatever we're at right now. So, maybe we're talking the difference of like 5, 10 G's or something like that. But just try and keep in mind that, we're coming up to this crazy halvening event. And then when these halvening events do fire, we might look back at like the difference between, 15,000 Bitcoin and 25,000 Bitcoin is almost a little bit funny because once we get on the other side of the halvening event, you might see some absolutely insane fireworks. So, if you're a little old lady, right? And you're just dollar cost averaging your way in. Well, you want to obviously, well, not obviously, but you want to try and focus in on at or below reload zones. And I'm thinking that this fall, this is your opportunity. Maybe the low is down here at 12,000, 13,000. I wouldn't be surprised if they flush these lows. Maybe the low comes in here at 19,000, right in the middle of the reload zone. I don't know. But what I would just simply say is once we do actually get priced down into this area, and remember, this was a big message that I said to you guys yesterday was, just understand that the 1% are going to inject a lot of fear and FUD and uncertainty and doubt, right? FUD, that's what FUD stands for, into your lives. And what you have to do is you have to say, well, I've waited, I didn't chase, and I really love this Bitcoin story and crypto story. And now is actually when everybody is freaking out and they're the most fearful and you see price coming off dramatically, now is actually the time when you want to be most interested. So just try and remember that message, peeps. All right. I think we'll leave the free broadcast at that, 9:37. So actually I talked even 7 minutes more than I thought I was. Let's head on over to the after party. There's a whole bunch of questions people had asked yesterday, and then also we had a few remaining. So I'm probably going to spend the rest of the video time going through that. All right. Have yourselves a great day. We'll see everybody when the market officially is back in business tomorrow. And the fireworks should be flying right, left, and center. All right. Have yourselves a great day. All the best. Bye for now.